who is playing Temur Ascendancy combo, a deck that we have seen a little bit here on the Open Series. You know, in combination with some mana production and a Temur Sabertooth, you can really go wild, but also Temur Ascendancy is just a good card on its own in this deck.
Yeah, this is actually a matchup that is fairly reasonable for the Temur Ascendancy player. Now, Obs on aggro, no slight against it, is one of the most powerful decks in the format. Just as far as a good proactive game plan, it really puts your opponent, it forces your opponent to have their game going on, or they're going to be run out of the game pretty quickly. That said, there isn't too much removal in the Obs on aggro list, so we'll see whether or not Cory can pull off a combo before dying.
Cory's going to start things off with a Forest and an Elvish Mystic. He's sacrificing a Wooded Foothills, which will put his life down to 19. You saw Thompson start off with the Sandstep Citadels. We are underway here in round number 1 from Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGDFW for your tweets all weekend long, as myself, Matthias Hunt, Ken Crocker in the sideboard, along with the rest of the SCG Live crew, bringing you 9 rounds of coverage today. 6 tomorrow. We'll cut to a top 8 and we'll eventually crown a champion. I know Ross Merriam is watching at home, as is Kevin Jones, as is Gerard Fabiano, really crossing their fingers, hoping Joe Lissette and Danny Jessup can't get the job done this weekend. Just one of the many storylines as we are underway here in round number 1.
Yeah, Courser of Krufix showing Temur Sabertooth for Creshaw. Now, one of the things why Temur Ascendancy combo is a pretty decent deck is that it does a very good mid-range impression. As you see here, Elvish Mystic into Courser of Krufix. That's an honest game plan that can beat a lot of decks. Now, where it can get an advantage against Obs on aggro is this Temur Ascendancy combo it has going on. What Gerry's going to try to do is keep Cory off that game plan and just make this a game about fair magic. You know, let's both play creatures, let's value each other, and let's see who actually just wins a slugfest. So cards like Dromoka's Command from Gerry will be really important to really stop that combo interaction that Cory can put together.
It's a Thoughtseize here from Gerry. He sees a hand of Genesis Hydra, Whisperwood Elemental, a Courser of Krufix, and a Wooded Foothills. So he's got an idea of what's in his opponent's hand, as well as what's on top of the deck, which is the Temur Sabertooth. We see that, of course, from the Courser of Krufix. That's in play, as you did mention. So Gerry probably has a decent idea of what he's up against. You don't know if he has kind of deducted that it's Temur Ascendancy combo, but he's against like a Nykthos kind of good stuff value deck.
Yeah, the Temur Sabertooth, you normally only see in devotion lists when it's green-white devotion. It works really well with Mastery of the Unseen. Gerry's a player who's very savvy about his metagames. I would expect he knows what he's up against. And you see here, him taking Whisperwood Elemental, that's speaking to that game plan I was mentioning of he wants to play a fair game of Magic where both players play creatures and value the other person. Whisperwood, great at that game. That's why he doesn't want it in Cory's hand.
Well, if Gerry didn't know before, he does know now, as Temur Ascendancy is the top card of Cory's deck. He's going to play his other copy of Courser of Krufix before playing the Wooded Foothills, as he'd like to gain 2 life, not 1. We'll see if he sacrifices away, but he'll start by attacking with the Courser of Krufix that was in play last turn. Thompson going to go down to 16.
Yes, if those of you wondering, the combo aspect of Temur Ascendancy combo revolves around Temur Ascendancy plus the card Karametra's Acolyte. This is a 3 of in Cory's deck. It's a 1/4 for 4 that taps to add mana equal to your devotion to green. So once that card has haste and you have the copy of Temur Sabertooth, which Cory drew. Temur Sabertooth can use 2 mana to bounce a creature. So if Karametra's Acolyte is making 7 mana at any point, you can play it, tap it, and bounce it, and just create green mana. So you will get as much green mana as you want, then eventually use Temur Sabertooth to bounce any power 4 creature. And with all this infinite green mana you have, you can draw cards up the Ascendancy, and eventually it will create a win.
Yeah, you can also just Genesis Hydra for your entire deck, do something completely crazy. But the nice thing about this deck, of course, is that Temur Ascendancy is good in this deck by itself, because you have plenty of 4-power creatures, so you can draw a card. Haste with big creatures is obviously good. And then you can just kind of play a normalized game, too. You know, you see on top of the deck for Cory, he has a copy of Whispered Elemental again. Gerry took that with a Thoughtseize because that's not really the kind of card that Obs on aggro wants to play against.
No, and I mean, that's the way that Cory's going to try to win this game. You see right now, actually, he doesn't even have blue mana for his Temur Ascendancy, but 2 Coursers plus Whisperwood, that does a great job of just that green card advantage engine.
I am a little surprised to see him sacrificing this away, but it looks like he wants to play the Temur Sabertooth this turn. So he'll sacrifice the Wooded Foothills. He will lose 1, and so long as he does remember his 2 Courser triggers, he will gain 2. So it'll be +1 life on this exchange. We might see the Sabertooth hit the battlefield here in just a moment.
Yeah, you're right. It is a really tough decision because Whisperwood Elemental is such a great card here. He doesn't want to shuffle it away, but the price of him keeping it, his cards in hand are Temur Sabertooth and Temur Ascendancy. He would have to just pass the turn and do nothing. Now, Gerry doesn't have that much going on with just a Fleece main line. Maybe Cory wants to make that play, but it is a pretty tough, close decision for him.
Nykthos is on top of the deck. That is enticing. Looks like that's going to enter the battlefield as Cory did not play a land yet this turn. His Wooded Foothills was in play in the previous turn, so we take a look at the top card now, and, well, now everything's just fine.
Fine. Well, certainly turned out to be the correct fetch there as he gets the land and the Whisperwood. Also, the Nykthos part of this package, that same interaction with the Karametra's Acolyte, he does play copies of Voyaging Satyr, which can untap Nykthos and basically do the same thing I mentioned. But he will need blue mana to cast the Temur Ascendancy if he wants any of that to work.
Yeah, that's the problem right now. We also can't forget that there is a Genesis Hydra in hand for Creshaw as well. Now, Nykthos right now will generate 5 green, so this is 7 mana. So this is going to be a Hydra for 5. Conveniently, you can put that Whisperwood Elemental into play. We'll see the 5 cards. The Acolyte, the Elvish Mystic, another Temur Sabertooth, and a Pelucranos World Eater. Well, it's pretty simple what Cory's trying to do. He's just trying to go over the top of Gerry.
Yeah, he's doing it right now. He looks a lot like a Green Devotion deck. I mean, he's just playing that way, which, if you know, Green Devotion can have very decent draws against Abzan aggro.
Yep. Just going big and going wide at the same time. He'll have to shuffle his deck from the Genesis Hydra. Of course, he did select Whisperwood Elemental. Again, so long as he doesn't remember his trigger, he'll get a Manifest from this as well, which Gerry will be able to see, and we will too, thanks to Corsair of Crewfix being in play.
I think Cory has just accelerated a little quickly for Gerry here. If Gerry wanted to keep things under control. If he doesn't clean up the board this turn, it'll be a host of Manifests for Cory. On top of that, he can use the Temur Sabertooth in his hand to bounce and recast Genesis Hydra to continue getting 5 drops off his deck. And that's going to be a pace that Gerry can't really keep up with. Not to mention that the Temur Sabertooth will protect his creatures from any removal that's not Abzan Charm.
Creshaw did forget his Whispered Elemental trigger, so no Manifest for him. So that Karametra's Acolyte could actually be a face-down Manifest at this point, but that'll be his draw next turn. Thompson just going to pass the turn back with the Fleecebane Lion, some open mana. You have to assume a removal spell, and he does have Abzan Charm and Hero's Downfall in hand. So the Acolyte will be the draw. The top card will be a copy of Eidolon of Blossoms.
Yeah, so the Abzan Charm can take care of Temur Sabertooth. When he bounces a creature, the Sabertooth becomes indestructible, but that won't stop it from being exiled. That said, Cory's not really under pressure to cast anything right now. His board's really large.
Yeah. He's in a very, very good position right now. Got a lot of card advantage going with those Coursers. Going to be drawing an Eidolon. You mentioned the Sabertooth in hand. That can generate a little bit of advantage as well. And Nykthos is tapping for a ton of green mana at this point. He's tapping for, looks like 9. Here's a Sabertooth. So some mana floating.
Right, so there are plays such, he right now, he has 5 mana floating. He has the option of 7 if he taps out. He can cast pretty much everything here.
Yep, there's the Acolyte. That's going to come in too.
Yeah, he's 1 blue mana short of just having the combo.
Yep. Now he's going to come in the red zone with his creatures. Whisperwood, Genesis Hydra, which is a 5/5. Both those Corsair of Crew fixes as well. Looks like Fleecebane Lion is going to do some blocking. And looks like it's going to get a little bit bigger too. Temur Sabertooth says, you know what? I'm going to pick this up. As Whispered Elemental was a creature that was blocked, so Fleecebane Lion is a little bit bigger, but I'm not entirely sure that Gerry can push through all of this stuff. Dromoka's command was the draw. Would have been pretty good a little bit earlier. Still might be okay now.
It won't be bad. I think what's happening here is that the Abzan decks, whether they're Abzan aggro, mid-range, Megamorph, control, they're really great with efficiency. Cards like Fleecebane Lion, Dromoka's command, Abzan Charm, they do a lot for a pretty reasonable amount of mana, but that said, you're always paying 2 or 3 for your spells. So when you scale, it's, you get 1 good spell at 3 mana, maybe 2 good spells at 5. But these Nykthos decks, they scale in a completely different way. It's not 1 spell to 2 spells as you get more lands. It's 1 spell to 3 to 6. And we're at the point right now where Gerry can maybe play 2 things in a turn, and Cory can do 4 or 5 things, and they're just as powerful as Gerry's 1 or 2.
Well, Gerry was able to do 2 things that turn, which is Dromoka's command, fight a Temur Sabertooth, win it because Fleecebane Lion's a 5/5, Sabertooth's a 4/3, simple math there, and make Creshaw sacrifice an enchantment. He had to sacrifice a Corsair of Crewfix. The follow-up play was a Rakshasa Death Dealer. Gerry had to take 1 to cast it thanks to Mana Confluence, and he passes the turn back. You see Creshaw's board. He's going to put a forest in play off of the Corsair. He'll gain a life. He's got a Genesis Hydra to 5/5. The Acolyte is in play. Pelucranos on top of the deck. Corsair and Elvish Mystic in play as well. Gerry doing a decent job of stabilizing right now. Looks like Nykthos is going to add a bunch of mana.
Well, as long as Gerry can make his cards get 1-for-1 trades, as you saw with that last turn, or even a 2-for-1 trade, it doesn't matter that Cory can play cards faster. And that's what Jerry's going to try to do. Let's make this a resource battle. That said, there are cards like Eidolon of Blossoms that can really blow open things like a resource battle.
The Acolyte's going to tap for a bunch of green mana now, too.
I believe it's 9 again.
Yep, no, that, oof, jeez.
Right, and that's the ability here. Look, Gerry, he managed to get 2 spells last turn. but Cory easily casting 2 spells in a turn and getting things like a Pelucranos activation if he needs it. He's just able to do more quicker, and the things he's doing are more powerful.
And Gerry's going to concede this game. A little fist bump. Look at that. Friendly game. Even though Gerry just kind of got destroyed there. A little fist bump. We're going to move to game number 2. Cory Creshaw is going to win game number 1 here against Gerry Thompson. Teamer Ascendancy combo is up a game over Obs on aggro. Before we do go to the sideboards really quickly, one thing to keep in mind, two missed triggers on Whispered Elemental. Now, didn't come back to hurt Cory that game, but maybe in these future games, assuming we play 2 more, you don't want to miss that. That's important in this matchup.
No, and that's one of those situations where when I've tried to teach players to get into the game, it's putting a die on top of your deck to remember your triggers is really dorky, and it makes you feel like a new player, but I've always, you'd rather, you're never too experienced to do things like that.
Yep.
You play a Whisperer, just throw something on top of your deck.
Your mind is working a lot of different ways in the game. There's a lot going on, especially with the Devotion deck. You don't want to forget.
Yeah, it used to be, if you've been playing for a while, that you weren't allowed to do that. That was added about 4 years ago, I believe, that you could put reminder tokens on top of your deck.
Yep.
So, and then the first reaction was, oh, well, that's very silly. I always remember my triggers anyway. But I've started taking to doing it. It's one less thing I have to do.
Bush League was the term I used to use, and,
yeah.
then I started doing it. We'll take a look at the sideboard. So we'll start with Gerry, which you have in front of you.
All right, well, Gerry's sideboard, a rundown. We have 2 Duress, 2 Tassiger, 2 Glare of Heresy, 2 Drown in Sorrow, 2 Self-Inflicted Wound, 3 Hornet Nest, a Wingmate Rock, and a copy of Nissa Worldwaker. So, in a lot of ways, I think Gerry's going to sideboard in this matchup like he would against a Devotion deck. So, the weaknesses in something like Team Ascendancy is the fact that the deck plays little to no removal outside of cards like Pelucranos, so flyers are really good on Gerry's side of the board. The extra copy of Wingmate Rock is one of the ways he'd like to win the game. He'd like to do things like trade with Cory's early drops, use cards like Dromoka's Command and Obs on Charm to stop Cory from getting too many green mana symbols out, and then simply Wingmate Rock him. And so I think he'll go ahead and go to that card. Outside of that, there are not too many huge things that he can do here. If he wants, Self-Inflicted Wound is a better removal spell than a lot of the other things he has here. So it's cheaper. I imagine he'll go to that. There aren't too many other things that I believe Gerry's going to use, though.
On the side here for Cory, he's got 2 Reclamation Sage, 2 Nelia's Disciple, 3 Hornet Nests, 2 Xenagos the Reveler, 2 Nissa Worldwaker, 2 Plummet, and 2 copies of Mistcutter Hydra. Nothing really standing out here that's all that exciting to me. I mean, Hornet Nest seems like it's okay. Xenagos seems like it's okay. I don't know anything standing out here to you that's really got you excited for the Obs on aggro matchup.
There's nothing great here for the Obs on aggro matchup. I would agree. I mean, the pressure's on Gerry to answer what Cory's doing. Cory would like to execute his game 1 plan as much as possible. Xenagos, Hornet Nest, those are possibilities if there's cards in his deck that he's not as excited about in this matchup. If it really is just a value contest between the 2 players, I could see him going down on cards like Karametra's Acolyte or some of the mana producers of the combo. He doesn't want to be caught with too many of them.
Season 2 schedule is what we'll talk about right now very quickly. Not a lot of dates left. It was been a shorter season. We're obviously here in Dallas, 2 dates after that.
All right, well, we have next week in Worcester. That's going to be our Legacy Open before. And I'm really excited about this one. We head to Columbus for our first ever Modern Invitational. It's a split between Modern and Standard. We will crown our Season 2 Invitational champion. That's at the Origins Game Fair in Columbus as well.
Yeah, that one's going to be a lot of fun. We have a little gap there, a little break in between Worcester and Columbus for Grand Prix Las Vegas, of course, which everyone is super excited about. But with Season 2 comes the Polar Punch playmat, and the last time you can actually pick it up is in Worcester. Now, as we like to say, no strings attached. You sign up for the tournament, you're just going to get one of these.
Right, so one of the things we've been doing with the Open Series is we do have special arts made on the playmats for competitors. And this one, I've been a pretty big fan of, a parody of the card Savage Punch, but of course we have our Steampunk Penguin, who is beating up a polar bear. Free limited edition playmat, as you mentioned, available for any competitor in Open Series through May 23rd, which is next week. So if you haven't gotten this and do want to get one, get yourself out to Worcester for the Legacy Open.
Yeah, we hope we'll see you guys there. That's the last time you can get this one. Season 3 playmat will be coming. Well, actually, we've got a second game coming for you guys right now between Gerry Thompson and Cory Creshaw. As these players will take a look at their opening hands. Thompson will be on the play after getting obliterated in game number 1. Cory's deck just kind of did its thing, just played a Devotion game, just went way over the top of Gerry.
Yeah, I mean, so these Devotion decks have a lot of different speeds which they can go at. Gerry's draws, by and large, play at the same speed. I mean, he had a Thoughtseize into a Fleecebane Lion. That's the speed he plays at. He's really got to hope that Cory doesn't have things like turn 3 Whisperwood Elementals. Yep. Those are going to be very hard for Gerry to get through.
Looks like both players are going to keep their openers. Thompson's going to start with the Sandstep Citadel. Creshaw with the Frontier Bivouac. So blue mana will not be a problem this game for Cory. Thompson going to sacrifice a Windswept Teeth, go down to 19. Forest or Plains coming, and now Fleece main line. So a good start. There's a world of difference in this matchup being on the play or being on the draw, and when your opponent doesn't have mana acceleration.
Yeah, no, I think you just hit it right there. No Elvish Mystic for Creshaw, and Gerry with a turn 2 threat. Last game, because of 2 Sandstep Citadels, he had to wait until turn 3 for his threat. That coupled with the fact that Cory was on the play with a Mystic, and you just felt that Gerry was too far behind.
We'll see if there's some mana acceleration here for turn number 2 for Cory. Sylvan Carry added, Voyaging Satyr, something of that nature, or if it's just a land and say go. And it looks like it is just Wooded Foothills and Pass. So if you're Thompson, you got to be thrilled with that.
Well, not only is it that he didn't have a turn 2 play, but if he didn't have a turn 2 play and his land there is a fetch land in Wooded Foothills, if I'm Gerry, I'm wondering just how many more lands Cory has in his hand. I assume he'd play a different land if he had it.
Temple of Malady is going to put the top card to the bottom. Fleece main line coming on into the red zone. Thompson will play a Rashasha Death Dealer and pass the turn back. Rashaw's going to sacrifice his Wooded Foothills. Going to go down to 16. And it'll be a mountain that he does select.
Yeah, we see the tempo going the other way. Gerry having 2 more creatures on the board than Cory at the moment. There isn't removal in the Teamer Ascendancy deck, so in a lot of ways, the way he gets by creatures like this is he has to outclass them. He has to get something bigger onto the board. But it's hard for his deck to do that this turn. I don't believe he has something on turn 3 that can really stabilize him. A Courser is probably his best play. He's going to be taking more damage off these 2 drops.
Yep. Assuming an Elvish Mystic, so a little bit of acceleration here for Creshaw. And he'll pass the turn back over to Thompson. Thompson will untap and take a draw step here. Thoughtseize in hand.
This opens the way to some of the more high-powered 5-drops for Cory, but like I mentioned before, he's going to take a lot of damage off this attack. Coupled with the fact that Gerry now has a copy of Thoughtseize, he may even be able to keep Cory off that stabilizing creature.
It looks like he may actually have 2 copies of Thoughtseize. Don't know if he can. Actually, he can cast them both. He does have 2 black sources in play. Easiest place to start is just an attack. We'll see if there will be a pump of the Death Dealer or not, but it doesn't look like there will be. Thompson may follow up with an Anafenza here, and he will. Now there's another Sandstep Citadel and pass the turn back. So no interest even in Thoughtseizing here. Just wants to get on the board.
Well, if you think about the cards that Cory can stabilize with, the worst case scenario for Gerry would be land into Whisperwood Elemental Manifest. And his board is reasonably able to deal with that.
And this is just an Elvish Mystic at this point. Creshaw's going to sacrifice the Wooded Foothills, take 1 to go down to 10. Forester Mountain coming. We'll see if he's got some sort of 4-mana spell. A card like Pelucranos might be okay in this situation, but he needs to have something here.
He needs to have a Pelucranos, and then on top of that, hope that Gerry doesn't have a kill spell for it. If Gerry has a kill spell for something like Pelucranos, we're into the part of the game where Elvish Mystic is chump blocking. Gerry's attack next turn is for 10.
Yep. Now these creatures are huge.
The 9 power on the board plus the trigger from Anafenza.
Now this will help. Pelucranos is here. 5/5 looking to stabilize the board. Thompson draws a card. Not sure if there's a removal spell over there. It doesn't look like there is. A couple Anafenzas and a couple Thoughtseizes. It looks like his grip at this point. So nothing all that exciting.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity for Cory. I think what Thompson's hoping is that he's just far enough ahead that he can use his creatures as resources to just push damage through. It's okay if Cory gets to eat some of them. He'll be at a real low life total.
And I like this attack because there's a backup Anafenza in Gerry's hand, actually 2 of them. So, this next turn could just be, the further along in this turn, we could just see Anafenza plus Thoughtseize. It also kind of puts Cory to the test, too, of what to block.
Yeah, and I'm surprised about this block from Cory. I figured he'd block any creature except for the Death Dealer. Because Gerry does have the option of pumping and regenerating the Death Dealer, it's just going to win combat over Pelucranos.
Yeah, a little surprised by that block as well. I think I would have preferred to see Pelucranos go in front of one of the other 2 creatures that are in play and maybe see Elvish Mystic chump block the Death Dealer for the turn.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons for not blocking Anafenza there would be that you want to strand it. You want to strand additional Anafenzas in Gerry's hand. But yeah, I'm surprised that if he wanted to pick a 3/3, it wasn't Fleece mainline. I guess if he doesn't block Rakshasa Death Dealer with the Pelucranos, he'd have to put Elvish Mystic in front of the Death Dealer to make sure he doesn't die to just Gerry pumping all the mana into it. So there would be a chump block involved. And if you're setting up for Hornet Queen next turn, maybe you should back up and say, I really do like that block from Cory.
I like it a little better now, since this is clearly what he was setting up for. Here's a Hornet Queen. And this is some real trouble here for Thompson because this is a card that's very difficult for Obs on aggro to get through. We have seen this when we've watched Andrew Boswell play Obs on aggro. and many other Obs and Aggro players as well. It's just the goal is never to let them get to this point. You take a look at Thompson's hand, I mean, clearly he doesn't have an answer for Death Touch spread across 5 different creatures.
Yeah, and so now we see why Cory didn't want to chump with Mystic, why he put such a high pressure on having it in play. He needed both Mystics to have the Hornet Queen for this turn.
Only one Hornet Queen in the deck, but rather timely. Now, Gerry can slog his way through this. It's certainly not the prettiest thing in the world, but Fleecemane Lion can go indestructible. You've got Rashasha Deathdealer that can regenerate, and Anafenza would get stung by a Hornet and die, but they're replacement copies.
Sure.
So there's that.
Right, so he can spend mana's like an issue, you know, regenerating Death Dealer and playing another Anafenza, that's all your mana for a turn. Monstrosity the Lion, that's all your mana for the turn. I think Gerry can go for one of those 2 lines. And like you said, he actually can get through the Hornet Queen because he's at 19 right now. It's unlikely that Cory can just turn all the Hornets sideways and win the race. But all it takes is some sort of follow-up. You know, if Cory next turn has something like Teamer Sabertooth, then that's all sorts of bad as he can start picking up the Hornet Queen and recasting it.
Well, here's the hand. Karametra's Acolyte, a Teamer Ascendancy, and a Forest. And he's going to wisely select the Ascendancy. Going to leave Creshaw with the Acolyte and the Forest from the Thoughtseize. Here come the creatures. And Anafenza is going to bite the dust here. It's going to get stung to death by the insect token.
Yeah, Gerry's going to grind his way through these Hornets.
Doesn't have much of a choice. And if you're Cory, I mean, this is just going to continue to be a lethal attack. Double blocking is a little strange here. I'm not entirely sure what that accomplishes.
Well,
Thoughtseize is going to take care of the Acolyte.
yeah, I'm a little surprised there as well.
Because there's no trample, and these decks don't play an effect that gives a creature trample kind of out of nowhere. So I'm not entirely sure what double blocking with a Hornet accomplishes in that situation. And given Cory's hand, or lack thereof, every card at this point and every Hornet certainly matters. Now, the follow-up play is going to be a copy of Eidolon Blossoms. We'll see what that runs into, if anything, at this point.
Number 3.
Looks like it was a copy of Xenagos.
That'll be great, getting him more chump blockers.
Yep.
If Cory can survive up until the point that he finds a Teamer Sabertooth, or even something like Whisperwood Elemental, he really does have a shot.
Hey, at this point, Cory is doing enough to just make enough kind of annoying chump blockers that's going to take Gerry a pretty long time to actually get through all this nonsense, because now he's got a Satyr coming every turn that can chump block, which is rather annoying. So not only does Gerry have to fade draw steps from Cory of the cards you mentioned, but he doesn't really have much going on in his hand either. He needs to find some real cards and some real action. Now, Wingmate Rock's a pretty good draw step.
Yeah, I mentioned about just how good flyers can be in this matchup. Wingmate Rock, one of the best ways to attack these devotion decks. 2 3-power flyers. Figures to be pretty good here. Looks like Cory has the ground tied up, but we're not sure if the air is tied up.
And you have to imagine Gerry is saying, please block with the token. And this is where this
Yeah.
this is where this double block last turn is going to come back to haunt him, because every token in the situation matters. He's got 1 less flyer, and given that we know Gerry's hand, you know, Gerry can't say Art of Monstrosity, or I'd imagine he won't do that.
Yeah, he could if he had no other plays, but the Fleecemane Lion just doesn't have that much value right now. It's never getting through the Xenagos.
Yeah, Cory is still blocking here. I don't think he's going to just say no blocks on the
Just take the 4?
Yeah, right on the chin.
Depends whether he wants to try to force Gerry's hand with mana. I think, so he's going to go for the double block on Death Dealer so that Gerry can't save both of the 2 drops. And as we know, the joke's there is that Gerry doesn't want to save either of them. He was setting up Wingmate Rock.
It's actually a pretty good double block there from Cory in that situation. I didn't like his double block last turn, but I like it this turn because, as you did mention, he's going to try to tie up his mana a little bit. Now, Gerry ends up losing his board, and now he's got to fade a draw step here.
Cory doesn't have a way to deal with 1 flyer. He's going to take a 3 next turn. Only has the 2/2 blocker and Hornet Queen.
Let's see what this is. That's a Teamer Sabertooth.
And that...
I don't think he has enough to be able to do what he wants to do. Actually,
Well,
he might.
Xenagos can make mana, so I believe he certainly does.
Jeez.
Right, so the Nykthos there goes ahead and makes 7 green, and then the Xenagos makes 4 more, so that's 11, so he can bounce and recast
Yeah, that's
Hornet
insane.
Queen.
That is insane. A timely top deck there for Mr. Creshaw of Teamer Sabertooth, allowing him to bounce his Hornet Queen, replay it. And now this got a lot harder for Thompson.
Saying Cory was just trying to buy time until he hit Whisperwood or a copy of Teamer Sabertooth, and he really hits the Teamer Sabertooth right in time.
Now, typically these Thompson aggro decks have gone away from BioBlight, and looking at Thompson's deck list, I don't think you're going to find any.
He doesn't have any in the 75. And recurring Hornet Queens is a situation in which Gerry does not have very many answers to, unless he has Drown and Sorrows, 2 of them in his sideboard. If he's brought them in, it does give him an out here.
He's coming in here with these little flyers.
Well, to me, I think Gerry's savvy enough that that's going to read to me that Gerry doesn't have Drown and Sorrow boarded in. If he did, I don't imagine he'd make that attack.
Yep. Creshaw will draw.
The issue is that Cory can repeat that same play every turn.
I would have some sincere interest in doing that.
I mean, it more or less you're saying he's drawing a Hornet Queen every turn.
Yeah.
It's very hard to think that he has better draws than that against this deck.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. He's going to activate his Teamer Sabertooth, pick up his Elvish Mystic. And Offense is going to bite the dust as Sabertooth is indestructible. Those Mystic will be redeployed. Nykthos can generate a whole bunch of mana as can Xenagos, so he should still be able to.
It's 8 green just off the Nykthos.
Yeah, he should still be able to do this play of just making a Hornet Queen every turn.
Yeah, that's without the Xenagos activation.
Yeah.
To be fair, with the Xenagos activation, he's nearing the point where he could just do it again.
Yeah, it's getting close to doing 2. Oh, well. Siege Rhino
there
off the top.
You go.
All
right.
That's
Cory
the out.
At 3.
That's the out in the situation. There we go. Gerry Thompson is going to win game number 2 against Cory Creshaw.
Close one there. A good top deck from Cory, met by a good one going Gerry's way.
It's strange because, you know, I'm thinking about what are Gerry's outs. We're talking about Drown and Sorrow, and we hadn't seen a Siege Rhino all match, so it didn't, for once when I'm watching an Obzon deck, it didn't jump to the front of my mind of, oh yeah, he's a 3.
Yeah.
Draw Siege Rhino, the game is over. And I believe Gerry scryed it to the top that turn with the Temple of Malady, knew it was coming, flipped to the top card of his deck, and was able to find one. So let's play a third one here between Obzon Aggro and Teamer Ascendancy. For Creshaw, you almost stole that one. Now, this game, as we saw in the first one, I think man acceleration is key here.
I mean, we did see Cory get pretty far behind there because he didn't have any mana acceleration. He was on the draw. Gerry got in a lot of damage with Fleece Main Line on Rakshasa Death Dealer. So, yeah, mana acceleration does seem important for Cory in his early drops. That said, I don't know in his later drops how much it seems to matter. The cards like the Acolytes haven't seemed to matter up to this point.
Have not been very impressive at this point. We'll see if they're going to stay in the deck for game number 3, and if he does draw them, what kind of effect they have in the game. But we'll very quickly talk about what's going on at the Origins Game Fair. The Season 2 Invitational is going to be there, and typically our invitationals are 3 days of Magic, but given Origins, we're going to have 5.
All right, so the Origins Game Fair here in Columbus. This is June 3rd through 7th. It is featuring, we do have, first of all, our invitational, as you mentioned, also holding an SCG Open and events that weekend. This is the only invitational, though, that we have last chance invitational qualifiers for. So what that means is that these are on-demand flights where the winner, single elimination, where the winner does get entry for the Season 2 Invitational. So if you're looking to play and haven't qualified yet, and you are going to be at the Origins Game Fair, this is an excellent chance to play some really great Magic on the weekend. Also, so we have the Invitational, the Open Series, we'll have IQs, we will have Super Game Night going on as well. Also of note that the Origins Game Fair badge for the event is given to players qualified for the Invitational as well.
Over $80,000 in cash and prizes, and of course with any Invitational on the Open Series, if you win, you get yourself your likeness on a card, and 10 grand and qualify for Players Championship, all that cool stuff. But this is what we're talking about here. Jacob Wilson, he won our Season 1 Invitational, beat Reed Duke in the finals just a little over a month ago, and as a result, he's a Monastery Mentor Monk token. That's a mouthful.
Right, so the winner of all of our invitationals gets their likeness on a token. Jacob selected the Monastery Mentor token, which you see here. And yes, if any of the Open Series entrants receive this token, as well as playing one of our 5K Premier IQs, and if you aren't able to make it out to one of our events, but still want this excellent token, it is shipped with any order from StarCityGames.com of at least $5.
So there you go. You can get your likeness on a card if you do win the Season 2 Invitational. A lot of sweet ideas available. Jacob went with the Monk token for Monastery Mentor. I'm still waiting for someone to cash in on the Master of Waves token, especially after the beating I took from that in Portland. Somebody should have their name on that card, or their face, on that card. Just great token.
It's not going to be around for very much longer, though.
I know, it still makes for a good token, though. At least I think it does.
You do, when you make them, you do get a lot of them, and I
Yeah.
do like that part of it.
You get to put a lot of yourself in play. I think it's sweet. A Temple of Abandon start here for Cory. Sandsep Citadel there for Thompson. His game number 3 is underway here in round number 1 of our Open Series event here in Dallas. A Wooded Foothills and just a passing of the turn, so no mana acceleration here in game number 3 either here for Cory. Here's a thoughts, Steve. Gerry wants to know what he's working with, and truthfully, so do I.
Yeah, well, this is the second time we've seen no early mana from Cory. On the play, it seems a little more palatable on Cory's side, but if you look at the hand, it doesn't have anything going on until turn 4.
Yeah, the Temur Sabertooth, the Genesis Hydra, or Pelucranos. Yavimaya Coast and 2 forests there in Creshaw's hand. Gerry can pick this apart a little bit. He also has another copy of Thoughtseize in hand too, so we can actually pick this apart a lot.
Well, that is something, especially with Temur Ascendancy, is that the deck is not particularly dense as far as quality threats. If Gerry can simply trade with Cory's threats, with cards like Thoughtseize, Hero's Downfall, he can just trade and then get ahead with something like Wingmate Rock.
Temple of Malady there for Thompson, a little scry action as Creshaw's going to sacrifice his Wooded Foothills, get himself a mountain, go down to 19. And we'll see what the next turn brings here for Cory. Ideally, some mana acceleration or a Courser of Crufix would be the best draws available.
Yeah, he doesn't know he's going to get Thoughtseized again next turn. You saw Gerry just going with a tap land because Cory's hand wasn't online until turn 4. He doesn't need to fire off the next Thoughtseize just yet.
There's a forest. Elvish Mystic was the draw. That'll enter the battlefield and pass the turn back. So Thompson will take a draw step here. It's a copy of Anafenza.
This means Gerry's still working with perfect information. He knows that the Mystic was the draw.
Anafenza will be the play. Thompson will have to take 1 off his land or ways to cast it. It's going to go down to 17. Going to dare Creshaw to do his worst. I think Creshaw's draw that turn was a copy of Hornet Queen. It's just a 1 of in his main deck. He played a huge role in that last game.
That one is huge in this matchup. So we saw just how good it was last game. Fortunately for Gerry, I imagine he'll get the Thoughtseize off before Cory's able to cast Hornet Queen.
I mean, we'll see. Gerry was really, I suppose, patient is the word I want to use with his Thoughtseize his last game, to the point where it was almost too little too late to actually cast them. Now, fortunately, Siege Rhino was on top of his deck to win the last game to move us to this one. As here's the Genesis Hydra. This is going to be for 3, so we'll see if this will bring anything with it. Nylon of Blossoms is 1. Anissa is 2, and Elvish Mystic is 3. Elvish Mystic is actually not bad, given that Hornet Queen is in the hand. Now,
Yeah,
that's actually a pretty good hit.
I mean, and this is where you'll have a test for Gerry, is whether or not he fires off the Thoughtseize here is really important.
Yep.
If he doesn't, Cory's going to make a Hornet Queen next turn. And with the Hornet Queen and Temur Sabertooth in hand, he can start pulling off that number, which we saw to such great effect game 2. So this time Cory will be at 19 instead of at 3.
Yeah, a little bit different there. Now, Thompson's going to fire off that Thoughtseize, which is pretty smart. Get an idea of what's going on over here. Yavimaya Coast, we know about that one. There's the Queen, and
He'll
there's
be
the
glad
Sabertooth.
that he did. So yeah, land 7 and mana source 7 plus Hornet Queen. Should set up the decisions for Gerry. Because he's taking the Hornet Queen, it does mean he's giving Cory access to Temur Sabertooth plus Genesis Hydra. So we may see Gerry have to remove part of that combo.
Here comes Anafenza. That Hornet Queen that's in Creshaw's graveyard will be exiled here because Anafenza's in play in just a moment. There we are.
Gerry does look like he has a copy of Dromoka's Command that he may use before blocks here.
Yep. Pump and fight. That Anafenza's 5/5 now. And Genesis Hydra's going to bite the dust. And he knows exactly what's in Cresshaw's hand, which is the Temur Sabertooth. And Thompson has a copy of Abzan Charm in hand to take care of that. So life is pretty good at this point for Thompson. Though, we don't know what's on top of Creshaw's deck. That's
Right.
the scary part.
Gerry's short on lands. He's going to have about 1 good spell a turn. But his plan of get 1 creature beater or maybe 2 into play, so he has 1 with Anafenza, and then just trade 1 for 1 with Cory's creatures, looks to be working right now.
And you mentioned right at the top, this is the kind of the plan that he's got to put together
Yep.
to try to win this matchup.
Abzan Charm, a great card to have here, as it will 1-for-1 trade with Temur Sabertooth, unlike most of the other removal Gerry has.
So Creshaw wants to do this turn. He plays Yavimaya Coast that we have known about for some time. Here's 5 mana. That's a Nissa Worldwaker. That's going to come in. Looks like it's going to untap a couple of lands. This will allow Creshaw to play his Temur Sabertooth as well. And truthfully, this is kind of the best of both worlds here for Gerry. He's got the Obzon Charm to take care of the Sabertooth and the creature to take care of the Nissa.
This felt aggressive from Cory. He also just had the option to cast Nissa and turn one of his lands into a 4/4. The issue with this line is that any one kill spell, even Hero's Downfall, takes care of Cory's whole board here.
Yep.
And as you see, that's going to happen. So while I think that was a great draw for Cory, he put himself in a really high risk situation that if he got to untap with those cards, he'd be really very far ahead, but it wasn't too hard for Gerry to take both of them down.
Let's see what this follow-up draw is going to be. It's tapping mana. It's going to be a copy of Karametra's Acolyte. And this is something else that you talked about where it is a very powerful card in the deck in combination with Team Ascendancy when everything's going right, but when everything's not going right, it's actually a pretty poor draw.
Right. I mean, it's a 4-mana spell that doesn't do very much, and in a matchup like this where you're getting Thoughtseize and you have to make each card count, Karametra's Acolyte often doesn't.
Creshaw will take a draw. See if he can find a big one here. Thompson is just continuously beating down with that 5/5 Anafenza. This is looks like a decent amount of mana. Maybe a Genesis Hydra top deck?
I think
or just
it's an attack.
Yikes. It is just an attack.
Well, he's not that far behind when you look at it. I mean, he's not going to win the race, but there's a chance he could steal a race.
Yep. Anafenza will come in yet again. Temple of Malady, put the top card to the bottom from the Scry. The follow-up is a Wingmate Rock. It'll bring a 3/4 along with it. And we'll pass that turn back over to Creshaw. Thompson's in the air now. A great place to be against a Devotion deck. Creshaw does have 2 main deck copies of Arbor Colossus. One of those would certainly be helpful at this point. See if he's able to draw one.
It looks like he has another copy of Nissa Worldwaker, but that's not going to deal with the flyers. These green Devotion style decks do struggle to answer threats that are in the air.
They've always been soft to it. You think of a card like Mantis Rider, that has been way too good. A third fist bump here, but this one's going to go to Gerry Thompson as well. There's a handshake too. Gerry Thompson's going to win this match here over Cory Creshaw, 2-1. Obzon Aggro will take care of Teamer Ascendancy combo for Thompson. Pretty healthy trip from Seattle, given that I made it with him, but it's off to a good start. He's 1-0.
Yeah, and a tough fight there for Gerry. Definitely had a very difficult game 1, had a game 2, which looked like he was on the ropes for, but was able to come back and win it in 3.
Yeah, it looked like that game 2 was slipping away, but Siege Rhino, as Siege Rhino often does, came to steal one. Not the first time we've seen that on SCG Live, so congratulations.